Aloha, fellow History 363 classmates and Professor Kompak. Thank you for joining me today on my research presentation, Ahead of Its Time, Feminist and Queer Themes in Final Fantasy X. I would like to dedicate this presentation to my mother, who is a die-hard feminist, and I think she would be very happy to see me working and researching throughout this semester on such a fine topic. I would like to get the setting put together before we get into the real meat and potatoes of things. So let's talk about the background and history of Final Fantasy X. I'm going to talk about the creators and the director of the game. I'm going to briefly go over the world and its characters, and I'll mention a real-life legendary adventurer who I'll be referencing throughout this presentation. So, Final Fantasy X or 10 was released by a video game software publisher called Square Enix. They released it in America on July 2001. And this man with the giant Buster sword is none other than Yoshinori Kitase, who was directed on many games such as this one, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy VII, and much more. He is truly a legend in the Final Fantasy community. Speaking of the Final Fantasy world, let's talk about Spira and Xanarkin. Most of the events within the story are seen in Spira. We get briefly a experience of a future or past version of Xanarkin, where the character Titus is from. Now, Titus is a famous blitzball player in this world of Xanarkin, and one day his world gets thrown upside down. His city's attacked and destroyed by this force called Sin. Sin spares his life and spits him out into Spira. And from there, he meets some of the main casts, such as Waka, Lulu, Kamari, and Yuna, as well as Rikna. And all of those characters are super important. But since time is a matter of importance, I'll be talking about Waka, Yuna, and Titus. They will be my 3 points of focus in this research presentation, mainly because I find their stories and intertwining characters and personalities to be the most vocal parts of the game, and I'll explain why in a moment. But before we do that, let's talk about the legendary adventurer Bo Ruberg. Their pronouns are they, them. They are a professor at the University of California. They have a PhD and have done research in topics of queer gaming, LGBTQ gaming, digital media studies, have worked on many big projects. They have received rewards such as a 2021 Rockwell Story Reward for their nonfiction. And one of my favorite quotes from their book is actually in the introduction. And it says, "This is because queerness in video games means more than the representation of LGBTQ characters or same-sex romance. Queerness and video games share a common ethos." And they continue. And I just want to take a moment to look at this because it's such a powerful sentence. It doesn't only talk about LGBTQ, it talks about queerness and the queerness of self. You don't need to feel queer to feel odd, out of place, to put yourself in these fantasy worlds, to do things that you wouldn't normally do or are too afraid to express in real life. And much like how people experience this in films, it is very much so a part of games, going far back even to Pac-Man and Pong. The research question that has been prevalent throughout my entire time researching this topic is on how was Final Fantasy X ahead of its time? And I ask myself that every book that I read, every interview that I watched, every article that I sifted through. How was it ahead of its time? It was ahead of its time in technology. It was ahead of its time on themes of feminism and queerness. It was ahead of its time on fashion, religion. It was such a powerful game, and it was created at the turn of the century, right? It was 2001. The creator's main goal was to make something that left a ripple in the water, and it truly did. So my thesis is the same or close to my main title. Simply put, Final Fantasy X was ahead of its time on themes of feminism and queerness in video games. It spoke volumes on topics such as multi-gender, MLM, and feminism of Yuna's story of fighting for herself. The first thing I want to get into, of course, is the multi-gendered sport, Blitzball. It is a tournament held once a year. All nations of the world participate. All genders, all species are welcome. And it is a highly physical sport. It plays a lot like soccer, but there is kicking, punching, even fantasy aspects of poison darts and other things like that. And no one seems to pay much mind to that. Everyone just goes for their favorite team and they trust in their players. I'd like to also mention that on the Elven team, on the top right, you see those kind of little shady figures. One of them is non-binary. They're on a non-binary elf, and you'll find that the elves in this Final Fantasy game are quite different than most. I think they're called Guam or Guado. Moving on of Blitzball players, I want to talk about Titus and Waka, their relationship, how they manage to show each other love without being intimate, to show each other care without needing to do any kind of physical activity. They just simply love each other. Waka is a anxious attachment style. He's always worried about Titus and the rest of the group. He's worried about himself. He just wants the best for everyone, and he freaks out. He loses his way. Where Titus is more confident in himself. He's much more secure attachment style in their relationship. He brings Waka down. He calms him down and says, "Hey, maybe take a breath, take a break, think about it." And just this back and forth relationship, they both develop and grow as people, and their relationships around them develop and blossom beautifully. And I think it's because of how healthy these two are towards each other. They really care about each other and they want the best. And I just love that this was included in the game. And let's not forget that this is Yuna's story. This is about her. This is about her transcendence into womanhood, essentially. She's 16 years old when she's sent onto this quest to destroy this thing called Sin. And she knows at one point she may and will likely lose her life, whether she defeats him or not. At the end of the game, thankfully, she chooses not to sacrifice herself for the world. She chooses to live for herself, to do the things that she wants, to be with the people she wants to be with. She wants to experience life. She doesn't want to sacrifice herself. And you really see the growth in her leadership style. In the beginning of the game, she's very cool, calm, and collected. She's still being guided, but you can tell she's paying attention to everything. She's leading a pack of veteran soldiers, intelligent mages, and strategists at the level of general. They all trust in her guidance and in her leadership. And I think that's an amazing thing to have for a female character. She's not a damsel in distress. She knows that she can do this quest alone. She says so many times in the story. She simply wants them around because she wants to be around the people she loves before she has to die. And that's Yuna's character. She is such a powerful character, and I think she's overlooked, much like characters like in Twilight Bella. I think she's an overlooked character. But before I go too long and too far, I must conclude. Thank you for participating in my research presentation. I'm sure there will be a Q&A for all of the presenters at some point. This is where my presentation ends. So I wish everyone else luck in theirs, and Thank you for your time.